Matt Bernier with the Friday DRF Bets race of the day, July the 13th. Race number 8, Belmont Park, State Bred Stakes action. A mile and a 16th on the main track. This is the Saginaw Stakes. Before we dive into the field, I'd encourage you to head on over to drf.com/bet. Get all the latest details about a new DRF Bets account, offers, all those sorts of things. drf.com/bet is the address. Let's take a look at the field of 5. They'll be going the 8.5 furlong distance of the Saginaw. Head on over to the Race of the Day page on DRF.com. You can download free formulator past performances and handicap along as we go through the field in post position order. Again, only a field of 5, but I think there are a couple horses that are very interesting. Right down on the inside, the number 1, Pat on the Back, goes out for Jeremiah Engelhardt. This is a horse that owns the highest last out buyer speed figure in the field with a 96, and I have to be honest, this race, it's also worth noting, was supposed to be run about 2 weeks ago. But unfortunately, Belmont Park had to cancel their Sunday card because of heat. For the most part, the field stayed intact. The big 2 show up again in here, but there's a couple little changes. Pat on the Back, though, since that time, the form has continued to be flattered of that commentator because Diversify, the winner that day, who defeated Pat on the Back by a nose, all he did was come back and earn a 110 buyer speed figure winning the Suburban last Saturday. So now all of a sudden, that race looks strong. Also worth noting, the 5th place finisher Control Group. He was the next out winner with a 1-on-1 buyer. So the form of the commentator has been very, very strong. And you got a positive formulator fact for Jeremiah Engelhardt. Past year, dirt, non-graded stakes, NYRA, state bred races, 4 for 16, 7 in the money, almost a $6 ROI. The concern here for a horse like this, if you are interested in a horse like this, is the mile and a 16th, because he's 0 for 5 at the distance. He's only hit the board one other occasion. The one thing I will say, if there is a concern about that, if you go back and watch the end of that commentator, he gallops out very well, as if an extra 16th of a mile isn't going to be a big deal. Well, actually, to be honest, if you gave him an extra 16th of a mile, perhaps he beats Diversify in that commentator. He is coming into this in raging form for Jeremiah. Wouldn't be surprised at all if Pat on the Back comes forward with a big, big effort on Friday afternoon. The number 2 is the horse that he will need to beat, though, and everyone else will, too. That's Twisted Tom. It's coming in for his first start as a 4-year-old for Chad Brown, and he's done some good things. I liked him in the Belmont Stakes last year. The trip didn't work out, and then he came back, and all he did was rip off 3 consecutive stakes victories against New York bred company. Now, the interesting thing about this horse, from figures he fits, from class he fits, from connections he fits, we haven't seen him since October of 2017. It's a considerable layoff. There's also a piece of me, and this is just me sort of thinking outside the box, trying to anyway, that perhaps the connections involved with this horse think that there are bigger and better things to come for him down the line. And perhaps the Saginaw, as nice as it would be to add another victory, another stakes win particularly, maybe this is not the goal. Maybe this is a starting point to get to something bigger. I'm thinking even as big as perhaps that race the second weekend of the meeting up at Saratoga called the Whitney. Maybe that's a little bit over the top, but he's run well at Saratoga in the past, and I just wouldn't be surprised at all if this was nothing more than a means to an end. Perhaps he is still better than everyone else in this field, but at what's going to be an odds-on sort of number off of such a long layoff, facing sharp company, Twisted Tom, who knows? Maybe he is just superior to everyone else. We'll find out. He's going to need to be pretty darn good and ready to go if he's going to take down a horse like Pat on the Back. Let's go on to the number 3 horse. Hit It Once More. Gary Siaka, John Velasquez has the mount. Most recent start, he ran 6th, beating almost 8 lengths, but the form of that race is held up pretty well. Timeline earned a 97 in his next start. Hoffenheim a 100. Taproot a 97, and the 4th place finisher came back to earn a 96 buyer. The problem I have with Hit It Once More is he wasn't close to those horses, and he's facing horses arguably in as good form as those ones were. I think Hit It Once More is a nice horse, but to me, he's best used underneath. I don't view him as a true win contender. He's going to really need to up his game if he's going to run with those big boys, the first 2 that we spoke of. The number 4 horse, I don't mean to be rude. Fullback Foy going out for Nick Zito. This horse on paper is nearly impossible. He's 1 for 23 lifetime, broke his maiden 2 starts back at Finger Lakes, has a career best buyer of 63. I think the connections would be thrilled. Take him back, make one run, try to hit the board, because as far as a win contender is concerned, I just can't see it. I can't even make a case for him. Number 5 horse is Why Not, the last horse in this field for this stakes race on Friday afternoon. The most recent start, okay, beaten as the 3-1 favorite. Exulting was a few lengths clear of him. 2 starts back. I think that's the figure that you really want to sort of dissect a little bit more, because the 92 makes him a fringe contender in a race like this. The problem is, look at the form of that race. The 3 horses that finished ahead of him, Patch came back and earned a 73 buyer. Chris and Dave earned a 59 in his next start, and Mr. Buff earned a 69 buyer in his next start. The form of that race on May the 12th has not held up well. I think you can kind of look at that 92 and say, that's pretty clearly the fastest race of this horse's career. Perhaps Why Not really isn't that low 90 horse that he was that day, and he actually is the low 80 horse that he has been throughout his career. To me, Why Not is a underneath sort of threat only in a race like this. Now, I made mention that this race was supposed to be run 2 weeks ago, and it did not go. And at the time, I chose Twisted Tom because I just thought he was superior to everyone else. Well, the good news is there has been a little bit more time and some other things have happened and some more data is available, which leads us into the pick for me in this year's Saginaw running on Friday afternoon, the DRF Bets race of the day. I'm going to go with Pat on the Back over Twisted Tom, simply because, again, it's kind of hard to ignore the fact that all of a sudden the horse that he nearly beat most recently, all he did was come back and earn a 110 and arguably put forth the most impressive performance of an older horse in 2018. So I'm going to flip the script a little bit. The distance is still a little bit of a concern, but Pat on the Back, he is razor sharp. You've got a positive formulator fact for Englehart in this spot, and I think perhaps he can get the job done. One other thing that we need to actually throw up there before we bail out of this video and we talk about the stakes race is the pace projector, because there isn't a ton of pace signed on in this race, and that's kind of case in point. When you can see Hit It Once More is actually the one that Timeform US has on the front end, I don't necessarily dispute that, but I think it's going to be a pretty soft pace, all things considered, and perhaps that works to Pat on the Back's favor, simply because that extra 16th of a mile, maybe that actually helps his cause. Maybe Twisted Tom is a better horse, but I think this might be the instance where if you're going to beat him, you can beat him with Pat on the Back because he is in razor sharp form. And again, maybe I'm going a little bit overboard on Twisted Tom. I'm a big fan of his, always have been. I wonder if Chad and company are thinking bigger and better going down the road. Maybe this is just the starting off point for his 2018 campaign. So for me, it's a cold exacta, 1-2 in the 8th race at Belmont Park on Friday. That is your DRF Bets race of the day. It is the Saginaw Stakes. If you are looking for a way to play this race or any of the other races from Belmont Park, DRF Bets is the way to do it. Head over to drf.com/bet. Get all the latest details about offers and all the other little nuances about a new sign up for a DRF Bets account. Scheduled post time for race number 8, the DRF Bets race of the day at Belmont Park is 6:50 Eastern. Best of luck.